Hello, this is just a quick video to talk a little bit about avionics based sleds and a solution that I am working on that is a little more elegant than what I came up with the first time around. I am working on a progression towards level 2 high power certification and have just recently started using electronic deployment. I did that for my first time at a launch about 2 weeks ago. While electronic deployment isn't actually necessary for L2 certification, I thought I'd get some practice in now. The rocket I'm using for this is actually a Binder Designs Excel rocket with a dual deployment configuration. So it comes with 3 pieces of airframe, a lower section, a forward section, as well as an avionics bay. So this is the internal parts of the avionics bay. There's the coupler section itself, and inside it's a pretty standard configuration. It's these stepped bulkheads. The other one is right there with charge canisters on it, 2 lengths of threaded rod. This attaches down here and the coupler section goes in between. So I need some kind of sled or platform in order to hold the avionics themselves, altimeters, trackers, whatever I want. And the initial kind of rough and ready solution I came up with was just to take a small piece of Baltic birch plywood and epoxy it to 2 lengths of aluminum tube. Those tubes would slide down the threaded rods. I would hold them in place with a couple of hex nuts. And then put the bulkhead on the other end, and we're all good. Just drilled out some holes here on the piece of plywood, and it worked well enough. So I did 2 flights this way. Only problem was this, one, it's all a little bit heavier than I wanted it to be. Not that weight is a huge consideration at this point in the flight, or in my sort of timeline. It also, the bond between the aluminum tubing and the plywood has broken a couple of times, so it's not super strong. And then anytime I wanted to change a configuration, I basically had to replace the entire unit, both the tubes and the plywood, which seemed a little bit wasteful. So that's sort of the current setup, and I'll show you what I'm moving to next. Okay, so this is a new approach to the av-based sled. What I decided to do was actually make it a little bit more modular. So the av-based sled centers around these 2 little mini sleds that are at either end. They have these holes and spacing correctly sized to the threaded rods. And then what I can do in between those 2 is create any length of board in order to mount the electronics. So that could be 3D printed like this version. It could also be a piece of G10. It could be a piece of plywood. It could be a piece of, I don't know, chipboard. It could be whatever you want. But it allows me to sort of modify the length, size, configuration of the board, just attach it to these little mini sleds with a couple of machine screws and lock nuts. And this sort of slides onto the AvBay frame the same way the other one did. It's all a little bit lighter and, again, configurable. So I can have just a plain piece of 3D printed material or other material like this and then drill it out for the holes I need. Or I can go with something that's more custom. So I'll show you in just a moment here what I wound up doing for my next flight. It's configured specifically for the electronics that I want to carry on the next flight. And I think this is a nice little solution. Printing off these little miniature sleds here is simple enough. I'll include a copy of the 3D model below if you want to do the same. And then this could obviously just be adjusted for whatever spacing you have on these threaded rods, which again is a pretty common design type for avionics base. This is another version of that same board, but in this case what I decided to do is actually create some standoffs that are spaced correctly for the electronics that I want to carry on this next flight. So you can go custom as much as you want. You just obviously have to have some of the 3D design software and skills in order to do that. Carson actually helped me a lot with designing this, but I'm excited about the fact that you could come up with something that is sort of very unique and specific for your given needs on a flight. And then if you have to change up the configuration, you could go back to a blank sled like this and just drill it out for whatever you need, or design another version of this, and this will just swap into the sleds using these same screws. Okay, and this is what everything looks like when it's all set up. So see how the board is laid out. This down here is a featherweight altimeters Blue Raven with the power perch. mounted, and then another featherweight altimeter's GPS tracker. So I'm using those standoffs that I positioned on the board to have a nice clean installation, and then the batteries for both of these have plenty of room. That's the altimeter battery, and then the GPS tracker battery sits on this little shelf, and then we get taped in place. And that's it. Again, the bulkhead, the aft bulkhead, will attach down here. This section of the coupler tube is actually what houses everything, and then that slides into the fore and aft sections of the airframe. And then if I run a different configuration, I just need to either just swap out the board. The little mini sleds are okay. You can see they're being held in place by small nylon 1/4 20 hex nuts, which reduces the weight even further. So yeah, we're going to play around with this configuration to make sure it flies the way we want it to, and just keep experimenting. So hopefully this is helpful. If you have any questions, put them down below in the comments, and we'll follow up soon and show you how this worked out.